Don, welcome to the show, man.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, I'm excited to dive into your journey and your story. And, I was just telling you before I hit record, I just recently ate at one of your restaurants and just completely impressed with what you guys do, the quality of food, the quality of service. And I think my first question for you is how do you feel about Robert Kennedy Jr. stealing your tagline? Make
Him
America
steal my
healthy again.
tagline?
He's now using the Make America Healthy again.
Oh, yeah, yeah, yeah. Man, I'll be honest with you, man. I follow the politics enough to know what's going on with affect to my business, but outside of that, I try to ignore it. I mean, I
I
hate politics, so I don't.
it's the most divisive thing happening in the world for sure. Like
Yeah.
it's something that if you follow it too much, it will ruin your life. Like you
Oh, it'll
said,
suck the soul right out of you.
dude, you're not kidding. Like you said, follow it enough to know how's it going to affect my business positively or negatively, and then lean
Correct.
into the side that favors you. But I thought it was funny because as I was doing my research, I'm like, oh, they use Make America Healthy with the food that you're creating, and then he's now because you have the MAGA, and so he's doing the Maha, all that good stuff. But dude, I wanted to get into your story a little bit. I want to start out with who is Don today, and then we'll break down how you got there.
Oh man, that's a load. How much time we got?
Yeah.
Uh, um, I've had the biggest lesson that I've had to learn in the 10 years we've been a franchise is literally, man, just humility. Kind of knowing when to ask for help and when to understand when I don't understand something, know when to go ask for help. You know, if you would have saw me 4 or 5 years ago or a couple of years into our growth and business journey there, man, I was kind of a hothead, kind of arrogant, thought I knew everything and made some stupid mistakes, made some stupid decisions and almost cost us the company with one of them. So yeah, I mean, I'm still running the company day to day, but I'm very knowledgeable about what I don't know versus what I actually know. So it helps.
Yeah, and obviously, when I hear that, I think of humility and self awareness, and that's a lot of things people don't carry with them. And I think that it's such a superpower within business to be able to approach things that way. Now, you mentioned 5 years ago or so, you weren't that person. What was it that you decided? Okay, I need to focus on my shortcomings a little bit here instead of just thinking I know everything.
Um, well, man, I think, back then, all the guys you see online now, all the quote unquote gurus is what I'll call them, like the Andy Frisellas, the Ed Milet's, the Gary Vaynerchuk's, all those guys were kind of hitting their stride 4 or 5 years ago. And I was sucking that shit up like it was Tic Tacs, I was trying to consume all of it. And then, you listen to this stuff and it pumps you up and you get motivated by it and inspired by it. And then for me, it was almost overconfidence, right? Like I was like, yeah, I can do this. I can do this, and I don't know, a couple things that have happened. Um, signing contracts without getting legal advice first, not doing my due diligence, on certain vendor contracts here and there. And even with hires, you know what I mean? Like my wife and I have always been the trust your gut kind of people. And we've made a couple key hires in the past that didn't turn out that, I wish I would have, heeded some advice going into it, hiring key level, high level employees that, we made the mistake, brought them in, and ultimately they didn't work out. And we wasted a lot of time and progress and production in the process. So,
Yeah, I've had a guy on the podcast in the past. I think he's been on three times now, named Brian Scudamore, who he's 1-800 Got Junks or 1-800 Got Junk. He's the guy who started that company, and he's
yeah.
obviously in the franchise business. And he often talks about that hiring process, right? He has a beer and barbecue test, right? I'll interview you if I'll have a beer with you. I'll hire you if I invite you to my barbecue. But I'll fire you really fast if you tend to not be that person because there's
Yep.
massive mistakes in that for sure. Let's talk a little bit about the Clean Eats journey. Where did it begin? Because obviously you guys are blowing up. You're popping up all over the place. There's tons of people eating your weekly meal plans, so on and so forth. But where did it all begin for you?
So my wife and I had it's almost the identical same concept back in St. Louis where we came from. Different brand name, different logo and everything. And we moved to North Carolina in 2012. And that's when we rebranded everything into Clean Eats. Um, we spent a weekend in Atlantic City of all places, which is a little north here of Wilmington. Um, we had made the trek down off of a referral of a friend of ours, Jen Hendershot. We went to the Arnold a few times and met her and her family. And at the time, we had our heart set on Florida. We were going there. That's where we wanted to be. My wife now had a couple cancer scares back then, and so we basically said, you know what, if we're going to do this and we're going to make a run at it, we want to do it by where we want to live, by the water. We want to be on the beach. We had no intentions of franchising. At the time, we were competing in bodybuilding and fitness and that stuff, and we just wanted to basically have our own little cafe and compete in shows and train at the gym, and that was about it. That was the extent of our vision at the time, and then coming here, finding Wilmington and opening that cafe, it exploded really fast. And the whole reasons we came to the beach, was to relax and enjoy the cafe. Well, it was nothing like that. We got so busy so fast, man. We had to start hiring employees, and the business just really ramped up to where outside of competing in shows and stuff, we didn't get much relaxation time. Which was fine, worked out for the best, obviously, but um, we opened the cafe in 2012 and then franchised it a few years later in 2015. We were going to open a second location here in Wilmington and met with a restaurant guy here in town who ultimately, in one meeting, talked us out of doing that and convinced us that we had a franchisable model. So he linked us up, to some franchise guys here in town, and then it was off to the races. So we went back, sold our cafe. Um, I'm getting my timing messed up here. I'm sorry.
You're good.
When we bought the cafe in Wilmington, went back and sold our cafe, and then spent that weekend in Atlantic City after we bought it, before we actually got the keys and moved in and everything. And we designed our own menu off of the old what is that old software? I want to say it was Photoshop, like the early version of Photoshop.
Yeah.
And we did everything ourselves. Our first logo was all stretched out. We didn't do it professionally. It looked horrible. Um, but we made it work. And then, like I was saying, I sped it up. Sorry, franchised it in 15. And when we did it, we got all of our stuff together and got all the paperwork, the FDD, and everything done. These guys have said, if we sell three or four in the next year, you guys are doing good. We'll just kind of grow it slow and take your time. Well, man, 6 months out of the gate, we sold 6 licenses to really
Wow.
close friends and customers. The first three or four were actually customers of ours that took the leap and took the risk. So, man, I mean, that first year and a half, it was 6 or 7, maybe 6 to 8 licenses in the first 2 years. And then every year we were growing by like 20 to 25 licenses at a time. And now we're up to, we have 110 open and operating with another 71 in development.
Wow. So you going from having one small cafe to now running a nine-figure business is quite the learning curve and the culture shock. What would you say are some things that you instilled in the process to make sure you were doing it right? I know you said you met with some people who understood licensing and all that stuff, but what was that process like? Because I think franchising is there's half the population that will say never do franchising, and then the other half goes franchising is the way to go. What were the steps along the way for you to make sure you were doing this the right way and make sure the quality remained the same across the board?
Um, in terms of doing it the right way and quality, it goes back to that trust your gut. And I know that sounds stupid. Every business guy is going to listen to this says, man, he's full of shit. But I'm serious. So, like, we've been a franchise for over a decade now, and still to this day, I don't really go to a lot of franchise conventions. I don't get involved in the LinkedIn game. I don't really follow industry, standards and protocol. I don't really get involved in that. Usually, typically, what my wife and I do is if we see an industry trend or something going left, we'll make an immediate right and do it our own way, whatever feels right to us. And we've always had that mindset of just because the industry says you got to do it this way doesn't always mean that you have to do it that way. If it doesn't feel right to you and it doesn't sit well in your gut, make sure you're doing what feels right for you. And that's how we've always done it. It's how we've always operated, all the way down from, core values of the company, picking the right franchisees, um, everything from operations to marketing is always just, does this feel right for what we're doing? Yes or no. And if it's yes, we do it. It's no, we veer and we change it. I don't know if that answered your question.
No,
The
no, it does, and I think that that's such a great way to do it because I don't think there is one specific way to do anything, right? Like as you approach certain, that next hurdle, right? It sounds like what you're doing is you guys grew something and says, oh, there's an opportunity. Let's see what happens. And then you continue to do that and just follow, like you said, follow your gut or follow your heart to the next step. Now, obviously in this process, you very quickly went, from 6 or 7 franchises to so many more. How do you guys get the word out? Because now I'm in middle of nowhere, Pennsylvania. We have a franchise here. How did you begin to build out beyond, hey, the first 6 people were our customers?
So our development started, when we first franchised, we stayed in the Carolinas, for the first few. Then we ventured into Georgia, Florida. We kind of stayed in the Southeast and kind of grew outward, if that makes sense. And for the first 2 or 3 years, we concentrated east of the Mississippi. We didn't want any restaurants out west of the river. And the reason, just for management purposes, ease of management. We figured anywhere east of the river, we can get there in less than 2 hours on a flight. So if we have an issue, it's a really quick flight to get there to help solve the problem. And then, as we grew, our systems grew, our staff grew, everything was evolving. Then we started to venture out west, and now we're coast to coast. But it took a long time to get there. It wasn't just overnight. We decided to start placing them all over the country. So.
Yeah, I mean, that's absolutely amazing. So talk a little, I think the crazy thing is, and I was really shocked when I went into your establishment and I was looking at your meal plans, how affordable it is, especially in today's world. And you're talking about clean food, not injected with antibiotics, none of that crap that you can find in grocery stores. Like, how is that possible for you when all I'm seeing today is prices going through the roof, things aren't affordable anymore? Like, obviously the middle class is super struggling. Like, how are you able to maintain that price point?
We leverage a lot of our buying power. So right now, today, Clean Eats, the brand, is actually two companies, and at times we still struggle with that message to customers because a lot of customers, they just see Clean Eats, right? Well, we have another company called Clean Eats Kitchen, and that's a distribution model. We opened that up in 2017. And we started that for a couple different reasons. The biggest one was we were servicing military contracts at the time. And able to get that to grow, we had to follow certain protocols, health standards. We had to get USDA certified. We had to get inspections from the government, all that stuff. And so we started to open up production facilities. We opened up our first one here in Wilmington. Then we went out to Salt Lake. We have a 70,000 square foot facility out there and another one in St. Louis. So now we can
Wow.
ship anywhere in the country in 2 days. And then we kind of leveraged that company to service markets where we didn't have franchise stores. So we were leveraging buying power on products, on food to reduce costs to the franchise owners, but also market territories where we didn't have, brick and mortar restaurants yet. And it worked. It worked out really well. It still works to this day. A lot of the franchise development leads that we get are customers where we don't have a store, but they'll buy meals online from Clean's Kitchen, have them shipped, and that's how they find out about the brand. Then they start researching, and then they just inquire about doing a franchise in that location.
Yeah, that's incredible. And obviously, again, that was another, like, okay, we have an issue here. We need a solution. And you're able to find those centralized kitchens and be able to cook it out and ship it out, which is such a great method to do it. And then, you mentioned earlier about being a bodybuilder when you opened this cafe originally. Being a bodybuilder, and I've talked to a number of them. I'm not one, but I've talked to a number of them. It's a full-time job in itself. Even just the food that you're eating is a full-time job. Talk a little bit about what got you into bodybuilding. Like, when did that start for you, and why was it such a passion?
Oh man. Um, I think it was 2000. I graduated high school in 98, so it was 2000. I was at a party, and at the time I didn't lift weights, I didn't train, I didn't do anything. I was partying like nobody's business. But I was at a party out in the middle of a cornfield of nowhere else in Southern Illinois, and a good friend of mine at the time, very large human being, 3 times my size. We were horsing around, and the whole liquid courage thing. It's like, I'm gonna wrestle you to the ground. He said, "You and who else?" And so, like a little spider, I jumped up on his back, and he just grabbed me and flipped me over his shoulder and snapped my right leg right in half. And so that's
Wow.
ultimately what led to it. I had to go to rehab and um, strengthen that leg back up. But then it was a lot of soul searching at that young age, man. I was headed down the wrong path, drinking and all that stuff. So I was like, I need to change my life around here a little bit. And so I kind of fell in love with working out and getting in shape and things like that, which ultimately led to my divorce from my first wife. She adored that lifestyle and I was tired of it. So we kind of went our separate ways. But, that led to probably 8 or 9 years in the gym, getting bigger, getting stronger. And then one day I was introduced to a local bodybuilder there who was a monster. I was like, man, I want to do this. And he kind of took me under his wing and showed me the ropes and got me into my first show. I think it was 2009, 2008, 2009, something like that. And I was hooked. And after that, it was on from there. And then I met Yvonne a few years later, and she was kind of just getting into the sport then too. So I don't know. It taught me a lot of discipline, which carries over into business. Um, we had to kind of hang it up, if you will, the moment we decided to franchise. That was kind of an aha moment for us. We're like, we can still pursue this, but there's nothing to it. We're not getting anything out of it. Growing the brand and growing the business was much more important. So we still sort of live the lifestyle. Obviously, we're not as strict. We're not eating fish and broccoli and eating Tic Tacs and licking stamps, but we still eat fairly clean. We eat our own food and we train a lot still, but the lifestyle kind of never really goes away.
Yeah, your buffalo chicken mac and cheese. Oh,
Yeah,
I don't know if
phenomenal.
bodybuilders can eat that though.
No, 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 no.
No, it's so good because like I said, we ate lunch there and then we ended up buying a bunch of the frozen meals as well just to check them out. And the buffalo chicken mac and cheese, I was like, this is probably some of the best buffalo chicken mac and cheese I've ever had. And I sound like I'm giving you a commercial. It's just true and it's fresh in my mind. And so,
Yeah.
thoroughly enjoyed it. But and if anybody finds you on Instagram, and it's funny how we connected. You came up on my feed because you had a mutual friend, Rudy, on your podcast. Came up on my feed. I liked the post. You followed me. I thought it was Rudy's post. You followed me. I followed you back, and just watched your content. And I really love the content that you create. It's really real. It's just you being you. And I think it was actually the reel that you posted about where you shit on your farm that made me go, okay, I'm gonna reach out to this guy and have him on the podcast because this will be a ton of fun to have him on and talk about this. Talk a little bit about your farm life, man. When did that begin for you guys? Because that in itself is a full-time job.
It can be, yeah. We're very lucky, very blessed to have some friends that have adjoining property, and him and his wife kind of help us maintain the property full time. But we bought our first piece of property out there, man, 5 years ago, I think, and it was right at 60 acres. And really, we just bought it to get away, just kind of escape the beach. The summer times where we live on the island here, it gets really crowded. Tourist season gets kind of nuts. And
I grew
so,
up on the beach in Jersey. I know, like, you don't leave your
yeah,
house in the summer.
yeah. So we just kind of wanted somewhere to get away. I like to shoot, I like to hunt. And I wanted a place to do that. So we found that place and bought it. And then 2 years later, the bigger property, which is now where the wedding venue will be, uh, came up available for sale. And it actually came available 2 or 3 years after we bought the original property. We just weren't in a position to be able to buy it. And luckily, the guy held out and didn't sell it and contacted us again when him and his wife were ready to go. They were getting to the age where they couldn't take care of it. They're elderly, and he was like, "Man, I can't maintain it anymore. If you guys want it, I'll sell it to you." So by then, we had the means to do it and knew what we wanted to do, and um, purchased that. And for the last year and a half, we've been trying to convert all the structures over and completely remodeled the house, put a bunch of new fences up, and redid the barn. There's a pool out there. There's a baseball diamond. I mean, the place is loaded with amenities, and we're really close. The website's live. We just put billboards up. They just went up today, actually. So we're ready to start booking it for weddings, I think, at the end of October.
That's awesome, man. And a true entrepreneur fashion, whatever you buy, you find a way to make money
Yeah,
off of it.
yeah.
Like that, that's the only way. Everything I look at, like, okay, I'm investing in something. How can I make money off of it? I tell people all the time, it's funny. My wife and I, we rent the house that we live in, but we own other properties that other people live in. And it's like that Grant Cardone model of don't own what you we want to buy a house. We just live in a tiny little town where there's not much available at any time.
Yeah.
Um, but it's one of those things that I'm like, that's just how my brain works. I'm like, why am I putting out money unless it's giving me money back? So I want to talk a little bit about, going into business with your wife. My wife and I, we have that investment company together, and we just work naturally really well together. How has that been over the last? I'm bad at math. However many years it's been since you guys started, like being able to navigate that and your marriage and keeping that separate.
It's a constant struggle. We make it look easy. We say that all the time. We say it to our owners, especially, and people that come in that inquire, a husband and wife team that, want to buy one of our franchises. We're very honest with them and say, look, man, we make this look easy. It's not easy to do. I think communication for my wife and I has always been key. We've never, I mean, excuse me. Ugh. Um, we've been married 10 years now, and I think in 10 years, three major blowout fights. And even then, 10 minutes later, it was solved. It was water under the bridge. So we've learned to communicate early on, and her and I have always worked well together ever since, I got involved with her and we started doing the restaurant together. It's just always been a natural kind of synergy. And I think the way that we've kept that going is what I am not good at is her wheelhouse and vice versa. And so we always joke and say that we've got our own lanes in which we operate in and we don't cross over. It solves a lot of problems, keeps us from arguing a lot, with clean eats specifically. Anything that has anything to do with the food part of the business is all hers. Her and her team run it, they manage it, they operate it. I don't even get involved in it. I couldn't even tell you what's on the menu next week. You know what I mean? So, but I oversee operations, legal, and finance. So, I mean, I can keep the stores running efficiently and manage our team and manage the finance department and the legal team and everything. But when it comes to the food, man, that's all her.
You'll find out what's on the menu when you look at your freezer next week.
Pretty
And
much,
you
yeah.
go, okay, I know what's going on now. But so how did you figure that piece out? I'm sure that was an evolution as well, right? Like I'm sure you were probably in everything. She was probably in everything at first. Did it happen naturally, or was there a time where she was just like, you can't do this anymore? We need to have this separation.
No, no. I mean, early on before we franchised, we both did everything. We had to because we were the only two. So we would take turns. I would run the cash register one day, she would cook the next day. Then we would flip. It was like that all the way up until the time we franchised. And then, building the franchise model for the restaurant, that's when we had to sit down and go, okay, well, who's going to oversee what? And she's always had the passion for the food. It's not that I didn't, she just enjoyed doing it more. Her culinary passion was higher than mine. But I came from a construction background, so operations and systems and procedures and getting something from A to B was kind of in my wheelhouse. I kind of had a knack for it, so that's kind of how we figured that part out was right when we franchised.
Yeah. What was the moment like for you when you realized that you weren't building something that you were just paying your bills with, but you're building a legacy for yourself? Because when you look at the amount of money that's coming through the business, when you look at the amount of people that it's impacting positively, like when did that shift for you? Have you had that introspective moment of like, oh my gosh, we're like, this is huge?
I think it's when we franchised because up until then, our cafe here in Wilmington it was kind of bodybuilding central. We were right across the street from a Gold's. And so all of the people that trained at Gold's would come over and eat after they trained. Everybody in there was young, fit, athletic, barely had any clothes on in the summertime, for the most part. And then just over time, we started seeing all kinds of different people coming in, old ladies, old men, college kids, young kids, moms with kids, and they would come in and the bodybuilding atmosphere, we literally had bodybuilding pictures on the wall,
Mm.
and all of our tables were
You were
decoupaged
definitely
with,
targeting a demographic for
oh yeah,
sure.
yeah, hands down. And we were meaning to, but it didn't phase anybody. They loved it. They embraced it. And we're like, man, this is crazy. We got little old ladies coming in here sitting here with bodybuilding and bikini pictures on the table and they loved it. And but I think the minute we decided to franchise, we're like, okay, we need to kind of soften this up and make it appealing to the masses and not just, the fitness industry. And so I think it was then when we did that, and then we started selling franchises. Obviously, not everybody's like us, so we started getting franchisees who didn't necessarily lift weights, but they were runners, they were tennis players, they were active in some capacity or another, which was important to us. And then, it just became and kind of evolved into what it is now. So now we say it's a lifestyle, and people are saying, well, like, well, what does that mean? And the way that we explain it is any type of forward movement, is what we kind of, it's what we promote. It's kind of what we believe in is you don't have to go to the gym every day and lift a bunch of weight as long as you're moving in some capacity.
Yeah, I love it. And so obviously your name is Clean Eats, right? And you also have proteins and snack bars and all the things in between. But what does Clean Eats mean? Like what defines Clean Eats as you guys source food, look for the next menu items? Like how do you define Clean Eats?
So the way that I've always explained this is we try to stay right down the middle of the food spectrum, if you will. We've never hold ourselves into having everything gluten free or, focusing on vegan, vegetarian specifically or grass fed meats. That stuff, it's all marketing bullshit, to be honest with you. That industry is a crock of shit. Um, so we've focused on portion control, right? Everything in moderation. Like you mentioned, the buffalo mac and cheese. Is mac and cheese really healthy for you? In moderation, it's not going to kill you as long
Yeah.
as, we try to find the healthiest version of mac and cheese we can, and it's portion controlled. So you're not going to sit there and eat 3 cups of macaroni and cheese with a little bit of chicken. And so most of it is portion control, and we try to, source the best quality ingredients we can at the time. Sometimes our stuff is organic, sometimes it's not. Just depends on the menu at the time.
Yeah, that makes, and obviously, being in your location that's local to me, in Wyomissing, you have you do have options that are like keto friendly and all those things to cater to the different demographics that are happening. Because the reality is, like, I know it's marketing bullshit and I agree with you, but at the same time, there's a lot of those types of people out there, right? So obviously,
Sure.
having the mindset of like, how do we cater to everybody? I think that that's such an interesting tactic. And going from hey, we're targeting bodybuilders to we're now catering to everybody, I think is a great shift that you guys made, obviously, which is why you've seen your massive growth. So I want to ask you a question that I ask every single person on this show. It's a two-part question. The first question is, what is your definition of success? And then the second part of the question is, what are 3 things you do every single day to ensure that success for yourself?
Mm. My definition of success is waking up every day with a smile on your face and being happy with what you're going to do that day. I don't think much more past it than that. There's people that make millions and millions of dollars each year that are absolutely miserable with their life. And so to me, I wouldn't define them as successful. And then you've got people that make 70, 80, $90,000 a year, but they love their job, they love what they're doing, they're happy. They have the freedom to go on vacation with their family a couple times a year, and they're completely happy. They live an absolutely incredible life. And so that I would consider that successful over the other ones. So that's my version of it is just being waking up and feeling like you have the freedom to do what you're going to do that day and be happy doing it. 3 things that I do. I wake up every day, and now thanks to Rudy, I've kind of gotten into this habit of just doing like a 20-minute gratitude every morning. So I wake up every morning, I go sit out on my deck, I stare at the ocean, and basically just sit there and breathe for 20 minutes, and then I'll write down a bunch of shit that I'm grateful for. I'll mix in some, we're big on law of attraction. So I'll write down a couple things that I haven't really happened yet. I'm trying to think and feel them and talk them into existence. So I'll mix that in. Um, the other thing I do is, I try to communicate to my staff how grateful I am for them all the time. It's kind of an inside joke here at the office that I don't sit still. This interview with you is probably the longest I've sat here all day. I'm always getting up and bebopping around and popping in people's office. How you doing? That sort of thing. So I try to communicate that with them on a daily basis, and then the other thing is kind of personal to me, making sure I'm doing what I want to do at the end of the day, whether that's going on a walk or working out or sitting in the sauna and just taking that hour for myself. really helps your mind.
Yeah, I mean, life by design, right? I think so many entrepreneurs are so into their business that they forget to live. I have a mastermind of 6 and 7 figure entrepreneurs, and one of our big focuses is life before business, right? Don't get wrapped up in the minute details all the time. Like, hey, did you enjoy today, right? Did you
Correct.
enjoy what you did versus feeling like you're stuck in the rat race? And I think that's so key. So I want to ask you a follow-up question to that. You talk about, because of Rudy, you started this 20 minutes of gratitude. What kind of shifts have you noticed in your life since you started doing that? Has it helped clarify some vision for you? Like, what are some of the positives from that?
Um, I've been doing this a little over 3 months now with Rudy specifically. My wife and I have kind of always done a version of it. It was just a little bit different, but the way that he taught us how to do it is it really kind of calmed me down. I don't really get as ramped up. I'm not much on patience. So I
I
used
I
to get
feel that.
really ramped up really fast, and that's really calmed me down. So like in moments of high anxiety or high stress, I can kind of decompartmentalize it a little bit faster than what I used to be able to do and not kind of ponder on it as long and say, do I really feel this way or am I just, freaking out about this for some stupid reason? And then I can calm myself down a lot faster.
Yeah, no, and it's such a key thing when you get to that point, right? You'll live longer too. You're not going to die of that heart attack at
Right.
45.
Yeah.
I think that's obviously a huge bonus to that daily practice. As I think about what you're building, it's insanely impressive. Now you mentioned you'll take time to kind of see, law of attraction, what's next, what else am I doing, and the mind's always going. Obviously you're opening up the wedding venue, you're doing all those types of things. What else do you have in the works, or where else do you see Good Eats going in the future?
Um, on the clean eat side, I always tell everybody we'll continue to grow as responsibly as we can. We've never had any desire, if you will, to go out and sell like big license deals, with private equity and things like that, where they take like the entire state of Texas and go develop it. Never really interested us. You lose a lot of control doing that. We've always just wanted to have our hands on the development from conception. So we'll continue to do that. And we'll just grow as responsibly as we can, as responsibly. If we sell 20, great. If we don't, we'll tighten things up in the interim while things are slow, which that's kind of where we're at now, with interest rates and things being where they are and things being as expensive as they are. Our lead gen and development's kind of slowed down quite a bit, but it's given us a moment to kind of reflect on our systems and what we need to work on, what we need to improve on. So that's kind of what we're doing here at the moment. The farm, man, who knows? We knew we wanted to do a wedding venue or some sort of like, retreat or event venue. We know nothing about the wedding business,
Yeah.
and we laugh about that all the time. We're like, I don't even really have a desire to get into the wedding business. But Yvonne enjoys it. She's enjoying thinking through different, ways to use the property and things like that, which is fun. So who knows? We may have a wedding venue for a year and then shut it down and only do corporate retreats. And we've talked to the movie studio here in town. They're interested in possibly doing something with us on renting the property for. They have a lot of events. Like around Halloween, they do this big haunted. I don't. It's not a haunted house, but like an outdoor haunted event. That they're coming to look at the property for. So all different kind of weird, different opportunities like that. And who knows down the road, we may say, screw it. We're not going to rent the property out. We're just going to use it ourselves and play around with animals and go horseback riding and hunting. And that's it. So a lot of freedom there. But outside of that, man, that's really it. I mean, I started doing some small business consulting. So once my time at Clean Eats is done, that's what I want to get into. The next chapter is taking like small emerging brands and helping them scale, whether that's through franchising or, just organic growth. I have a passion for that now. Now that I've spent 10 years doing it and making a ton of mistakes, I feel like I could create some value there.
Yeah. Thank you for not doing it the opposite way, where you become one of those fake coaches who hasn't done it first. So when
Yeah,
you,
no,
yeah, which they're
those are the people
everywhere.
that I'm trying to protect from.
Yeah, and unfortunately, those people are loud, right? And so I think that's such a great, next venture for you to step into and continue to do more of that. But I want to kind of reflect a little bit. I want to take you to the end of your life, and I want you to imagine that everything that you've built with Clean Eats is it's gone. It doesn't exist anymore. And at the end of your life, you can only be remembered for one sentence. What would you want that sentence to be?
That I had a positive impact on as many people as possible.
I love it, man. I love it. So I wrap up every single interview with the same question. But before we get there, how do people get more information on Clean Eats? How can they look into franchising with you? How do they follow you on social? What's all the good stuff?
So cleaneats.com, EATZ.com is Clean Eats. My consulting is Integrity Brands, brands with a Z. We're kind of fond of that Z just to be a little bit different, but it's integritybrands.com. And then me personally, it's just Don Varady on Instagram.
Awesome, man. Like I said, I wrap up every single interview with the same question. And that question is, in your life, what has been your biggest moment of growth?
Biggest moment of growth. Um, Probably early on in the company, I signed a consulting agreement with an advisor that we were trying to bring on, and it my arrogance and kind of naiveness at the same time. I signed that contract without getting legal advice, and it almost cost us the entire company. And so my biggest moment of growth there was that's where I learned humility. I had to eat the whole pie in one bite.
Mm,
So after that, I was like, okay, I got to start asking for help and knowing my strengths and weaknesses and what I don't know versus what I do know and that sort of thing. So humility.
I love it, man. Don, thank you so much for coming on and sharing your journey with my audience. This has been great. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you.